Taking the conversation forward, joining us live is Kirip Chhalia, who's a former Congress leader, and also Nani Gopal Mahanta, who's a political analyst. Many thanks for joining us and a very good morning. Now, of course, voting has begun for the first phase in West Bengal and Assam. Coming to you, sir, first. Of course, Nani Gopal Mahanta, you're a political analyst. My first question would be to you. Voting has begun. It's been more than 1.5 hours. A lot of pre-poll violence was being reported from the state of West Bengal. We're also picking up news that MPs of the All India Trinamool Congress are going to be knocking at the Election Commission's doorstep today regarding the violence that's been taking place in the polls.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, regarding the violence, particularly in West Bengal, I think that goes well with the election procedure in West Bengal. This is not the first time, for quite long time, we have been witnessing violence is a part and parcel of the political culture of West Bengal. But no such violent political culture is relevant in the state of Assam. And we do not see such violent activities. Of course, there are party clashes or even inter-party clashes in some places of Assam. But this kind of systematic violence is not there. And if you talk about the Upper Assam today, there are 47 constituencies where the first phase of election is taking place, and where I see a kind of competitive edge for the BJP, precisely because of their developmental work, number one, and number two, because of the ethnic composition of the 47 constituencies in the first phase of the election. Particularly the tea garden communities, if you look at, they're occupying about, having a central say in 33 constituencies. So what we see, the traditional vote base that we have in Upper Assam, where the 47 constituencies are going to the polls, they have shifted their allegiance from Congress to the BJP in last 3-4 elections. So that is why I would say in this first phase of election in Assam, particularly in those 47 constituencies, all the major ethnic groups like the tea garden communities or even the tribal group, if you talk about the Motok, if you talk about the Morang and other, Deuri, Sunual, Kosari and others, have shifted their allegiance from Congress to BJP in last 4-5 years. For example, I can give you the example of many leaders in Moran Motok community who stood against the Ka. They jumped into anti-Ka agitation. In fact, many of the leaders, they approached the court against Ka. But eventually, in the month of January and February, all these leaders, many of them have joined BJP. So what I would like to call a competitive edge for BJP, precisely because of, number one, the developmental works, the infrastructural works, particularly qualitative development in the field of education, in the field of infrastructural development like roads, bridges, and these are some points that provide a huge positive advantage for BJP, number one. And number two, the ethnic composition of all those constituencies
all
are
right,
in
very interesting
similar
points raised by you, Mr. Mahanta, and I'll take that forward to Mr. Kirip Chhalia as well. But before that, we need to dip into some updates we're picking up from poll-bound Bengal as well, and then I'll go back to Assam. Going across to my colleague Shazia, who's joining us from Jharkhand. Shazia, what exactly are you picking up? It's been almost 2 hours into polling. Voting is already taking place. Take us through the law and order situation from where you're reporting.
बिल्कुल मैं आपको ताज़ा अपडेट बताना चाहूंगी कि अभी स्थिति यहां पर बिल्कुल सामान्य है। 2 घंटे से ज्यादा का समय बीत चुका है और 10% वोटिंग अब तक हो चुकी है, यानी कि 10% वोटिंग अब तक हो चुकी है पश्चिम बंगाल की 30 सीटों पर। आज 30 सीटों पर चुनाव होना है। तस्वीरें मैं जल्दी से दर्शकों को दिखाना चाहूंगी। यहां पर आकर आप तस्वीरें देखिए, सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग के जरिए लोग आगे बढ़ रहे हैं और अपने मत अधिकार का इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं। यहाँ पर पुरुष और महिलाएं दोनों ही एक बड़ी तादाद में पहुंचे हुए हैं। इससे पीछे भी यहाँ पर वोट देने के लिए लोग पहुंचे हुए, लेकिन हम बात करेंगे लोगों से। मैम, वोट देने के लिए आई हैं? मुद्दा क्या है? बदलाव चाहती है, परिवर्तन चाहती है, डेवलपमेंट चाहती है? ठीक है, तो यहाँ पर लैंग्वेज प्रॉब्लम है, लेकिन लोग हिंदी समझते जरूर हैं। वोट देने आई हैं? देखिए आप किस तरीके से यहाँ पर सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग का पालन किया जा रहा है। जो लोग मास्क अपने साथ नहीं लेकर आए थे उनको यहाँ पर मास्क बांटे गए हैं। यहाँ मैं दिखाना चाहूंगी, एक सेकेंड मैं दिखाना चाहूंगी किस तरीके से जिस हाथ से लोग वोट डालेंगे, यानी कि जिस उंगली से बटन को दबाएंगे उसमें ग्लव्स बनाए गए हैं। आप ये देख
Okay, we'll go back to Shazia in just a bit. There's an audio problem with Shazia. We'll fix that line and go back to more updates from poll-bound Bengal. But coming back to Assam, and Mr. Kirip Chaleha, I want your word on this. You know, we had Mr. Mahanta speak of certain issues, and also, to be specific, let's talk a little more about the political rhetoric around the tea garden workers, also the CA issues. These are the two issues that the opposition has also raised. Do you think reason enough, or rather big enough reasons for the opposition to have even a remotely of an edge over the BJP? Because as of now, the BJP is extremely confident as far as the campaigning goes of Prime Minister Modi, all the top brass of the BJP. They've been extremely confident, and they've been only hitting out at the Congress and saying that they really don't have an agenda as far as this election is concerned.
Well, I think there is hardly any difference in the assessments made by various political analysts. That the Assam election, this Assam election, the main issues have been bypassed, and there has been more or less. It has become almost a traditional kind of election where the talks of development and what the past the incumbent government has been doing. And it can also be, I would not like to differ on the fact that the first phase, BJP is supposed to be having an edge. When you look at the organized meetings and the assertiveness of the BJP leaders on issues, very confident. But then when you look at only at the organized support, then you'd feel that BJP is way ahead of the opposition.